Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to introduce Flairesse, the new prophylaxis line from DMG to you. In order to do this, I'd like to talk a little bit about oral health in general. What are the meanings of some specialized vocabulary? And what do we mean with fluoridation? And naturally, I want to introduce Flairesse in detail to you.
When Cutie Katie makes a scene, she wears a smile brush 3 ways clean.
Cleaner breath, cleaner taste, cleaner teeth, 3 ways clean is Colgate Clean.
When handsome Harry joins the session, he makes a real cool 3-way impression.
Cleaner breath, cleaner taste, cleaner teeth, 3 ways clean is Colgate Clean.
In your mouth, trouble can start with trapped food particles that attract decay bacteria, producing decay acids. Colgate with activated Gardol foams as you brush, helps foam away food, decay bacteria, and decay acids. Regular Colgate brushing for most people instantly helps stop bad breath that starts in the mouth.
A happy Colgate girl and boy.
Brush 3 ways clean to both enjoy.
Cleaner breath, cleaner taste, cleaner teeth, 3 ways clean is Colgate Clean.
Help fight decay with Colgate.
3 ways clean is Colgate Clean.
Well, it's not so long ago actually that toothpaste was not in everybody's mouth. But nowadays we are talking about health. And health, the experts say, and future-oriented experts tell us, will be the buzzword for the new century. So with health, that also means oral health, because without oral health, then naturally not a general well-being can be achieved. And this is why we have a prophylaxis line. We want to prevent bad effects like caries, like erosion, going to our teeth and damaging the teeth. And we can see that there is a huge trend towards this health orientation actually. So the increase, for example, for toothpaste is 10%, for toothbrushes has been 30%, and for floss it's a staggering 56%. So people are investing money to get a better oral health. And actually you can do oral health at home or in your practice. And at home and at a practice there is a difference. So at home what you usually do is toothbrushing, you use mouth rinses maybe, the floss or intraoral brushes, and eventually you might consider changing your diet. In the practice, in the office, what you have is a much more detailed analysis and process that you undergo. So there's a caries risk analysis for you. Then naturally the professional tooth cleaning that you expect. We have fluoridation and remineralization to help protect the teeth, and eventually maybe for kids fissure sealing. And in a good prophylaxis session you will also find some education. So you will be educated towards a better oral hygiene and you will be trained to do that. When you go to a professional tooth cleaning, naturally you don't want a starting point like this. But what we all want is the nice clean feeling that you have when you exit that professional tooth cleaning. So this is what we want to achieve today, and this is where we invest money and try to protect the teeth. And that's the key word. We'll start a new session talking about teeth and clarifying some topics in the next session. Thank you. So this is the second part where we want to clarify a few topics. We've talked about health. Now I want to talk about the key words. What is demineralization? What is remineralization? What has fluoridation to do with it, and is erosion playing a role in all of these processes? So it all starts with hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite is the substance that our teeth are made out of. It's the hardest substance in the human body. But despite the fact that it's so very hard, it has one soft spot. And the soft spot is, as a chemist I can say that, the hydroxy group. Whenever that hydroxy group is attacked by an acid, it sort of starts the crumbling down of the crystal structure. We lose minerals. And this is what is happening with various things. It can be the bacteria. The bacteria actually starting very early on in your tooth, in your mouth. There's this pellicle binding protein that attracts the floating around Streptococcus mutans. And then, unfortunately, these bacteria, they can interconnect with a glucane binding protein. And when they do, when we have reached that stage, then we call this, or used to call this, plaque. Nowadays we call it biofilm. And that biofilm, when it gets something to eat for the bacteria, so sugars, they convert this sugar into acid, and this acid will demineralize, leach out the minerals from the tooth. And when that process goes on, we get what we call caries. Now, this is not the only thing that can demineralize the tooth. You may be familiar with the pH scale. The pH scale is basically a scale that tells you how acidic or how basic is something. And it goes from 0 to 14, so 7 is neutral. And there's one specific important pH value, and that is 5.5. At pH 5.5, your enamel starts to demineralize, lose minerals. And to put this a little bit into perspective, let's look at a few things that we routinely come in contact with. So, milk. 6.9, right on the dot, plus it contains a lot of calcium, so it's very good for your teeth. But would you consider cheese on the dangerous side already? 5.9 is already bordering it. And naturally, we have orange juice, 3.8. When I'm traveling in a hotel, I will always in the morning drink orange juice. And you can feel it on your teeth. When you go with your tongue for your freshly brushed teeth, you feel that they are not as smooth as they were when you used the toothbrush this morning. Naturally, there's Coke, 2.5. There's people who say it's not the worst you can do to your teeth. If you want to, you could use drinks that contain sugar, carbonated water, and citric acid. That would actually be a very bad combination for your teeth. And then you got vinegar. So does this mean we cannot use these things? Basically, yes. Whenever we use these things, or whenever the bacteria get to work and the pH drops below 5.5, then we get this leaching out of minerals. And the thing that we can do then is raise the pH up to a healthy pH above the 5.5 line, and then the saliva will kick in and bring in minerals to remineralize the tooth. And the thing that is very important for patients to understand is that this happens in a curve-like situation. Like every time you eat something, breakfast, coffee, lunch, cake, dinner, snack, whatever, you get this acid challenge. The bacteria get something to eat, they produce the acid, and you get the erosion factor as well. So what you need to understand is that your caries risk depends not only on how much the sugar intake is, but how often that sugar intake happens. So you want to do something to prevent the bad things. And basically, that's the idea that we have today. We want to establish an equilibrium between the remineralization and the demineralization. If at the end of the day you have as much remineralization as you have demineralization, the world is fine, your teeth are fine, everything is okay. However, if the demineralization takes over, if that becomes the major thing, then eventually you will get a significant loss of tooth structure, and that eventually means you will in the end get a hole in your tooth. And that's basically why this thing is so bad. It's a one-way street. It's very, very hard to reverse the process. So you start with a small demineralization, then you get what's called a white spot. The white spot turns into a brown spot. Finally, the surface breaks down, and eventually you have this big, big hole. But this whole thing is a process, and that whole process is called caries. Now, there is products on the market that claim to be able to reverse that. Tooth mousse, for example, is one such thing. So when you look at tooth mousse, there's a slight problem. Let me show you this tooth here. So this is a cut tooth. You see basically the purple part here that is dentin, and then you see this bluish part that is enamel, and the brown part naturally is the caries. And on top of the caries you find that superficial layer. There is a superficial layer that looks pretty much intact, and it almost is. Now when we look at this molecule here, this is a model of the active ingredient in tooth mousse. And that's a huge, huge molecule. And it's very tough to imagine that this molecule is able to penetrate that layer and start the remineralization from the inside of the tooth. If you look very carefully on that slide, you find that little dot. Actually, it's a lot exaggerated. That is an acid molecule. So in comparison, the acid molecule is tiny, and the remineralization thing is a big clunk. And that is the issue. It cannot penetrate that layer and build up the tooth structure that has been lost. So we have an issue that we can only remineralize very, very shallow lesions, very starting lesions only. And that means if we are on this one-way road, that we have to develop sort of a modular thinking. We have to think of ways, what do we do if the prophylaxis is not successful? And what you want to do is stop the caries there and then, and this is the icon approach. So this is where we would go and tell the patient, look, you've got caries, we can treat this early caries, we've got a procedure for that, icon. So we talked about oral health and some of the meanings of these words that we need to understand. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about fluoridation. In the video that you saw in the beginning, they talk about toothbrushing and Gardol and whatever. But the most important thing about your toothpaste is not how it tastes, it is that it contains fluoride. Fluoride is a very, very essential ingredient in helping you prevent caries. And what it does is it converts hydroxyapatite into fluoroapatite. And fluoroapatite is much more resistant to acid erosion. So this is a normal human tooth, and that contains about 10% fluoroapatite. Shark's teeth are a lot more resistant to erosion, and they are 100% fluoroapatite. So if you think that it can't get any better, wait a second, we can fluoridate natural enamel. And if we do this with the help of Flairesse, for example, we get fluoridated enamel, and that is actually a lot better even than shark's teeth resisting the acid erosion, whether it's from your drinks and food or from the bacteria. So fluoridation is a very interesting means of doing that. And to be effective, there are a few factors that are important in the fluoridation. And one of these factors is concentration, meaning a lot helps a lot. That's a very common saying. And it's actually true for fluorides. So if you think about how much is a lot, well, toothpaste, to compare this with Flairesse varnish, for example, the Flairesse varnish contains about 20 times as much fluoride as your normal toothpaste. So this is a huge fluoride boost that you give your teeth when you apply this. But you can actually overdose anything. So if you overdose fluoride for a long period of time, you may see something like this. This is fluorosis white spots on your teeth. And they are not really a problem in terms of making the teeth bad, but they look a bit unsightly. But there's also a factor that if you put in a lot of a certain substance, like the fluoride, then you can poison yourself. You can poison yourself with anything, so you can even poison yourself with fluoride. And the thing is that if you overdose that too much, and people sometimes eat it. I mean, as a kid, we had a toothpaste. We ate half of that toothpaste because it tasted like bubble gum, and we liked it. And that's a reason why, for example, kids' toothpaste contain only half the amount of fluoride as that for an adult. So A lot helps a lot. We have a lot in there, and we have as much as we legally can. The second factor that is important is time. How long does the fluoride stay on your teeth? And what we have is a very good formulation, a formulation that allows the fluoride to remain effective on the tooth for as long a time as we can. And even though for the gel and the foam, it's only a 1-minute application, with the varnish it is several days, and that means you have a very effective fluoridation period. The third factor, and that is a bit also to do here naturally with when you brush your teeth, it's not the wisest thing actually to rinse your mouth immediately and spit out everything, because then you remove all the valuable fluoride that you put in. So the third factor that we have is accessibility. How easy is it to use the fluoride? There's various sources of fluoride. For example, there's calcium fluoride. That's a mineral that leaches out no fluoride at all, basically, so you cannot do anything with it. We are using sodium fluoride, which is very much accessible and very much usable for the body. The only other source apart from fluoridation products and your toothpaste is, in Germany at least, fluoridated salt. In some countries you find fluoridated water, but in Germany we only have fluoridated salt. But that is your own decision. You have to expressively go and buy that product and put it in your food. Otherwise, that is basically it for your fluoridation needs. So, with that, the next thing I want to show you is the Flairesse product and why it is so advantageous to use Flairesse. Thank you. So let's look into Flairesse. Flairesse is our protective shield that keeps us healthy in terms of allowing our teeth to survive in a very harsh oral environment. And when you go to a prophylaxis system, you will find that in this seating, prophylaxis products are used at various stages. So the initial thing is naturally that you get an examination, that you will be assessed as to your caries risk. If you already have these concrements, if it's really hard calculus on your teeth, scaling will be necessary. This is typically the most ugly thing that you can undergo in this session. And then it gets more pleasant, then you do a cleaning. And for this cleaning, you need a prophylaxis paste. And after that cleaning, you will polish the teeth so that they are really nice and smooth again. And both the cleaning and the polishing will be done with a prophylaxis paste. Typically, in this setting, you will also receive a fluoridation. Your teeth will be protected against the acid attack, and you usually do this with either a foam or a fluoride gel. Occasionally, you may use a varnish in this context. And then, at the end of the session, you will be educated towards getting a healthier mouth, cleaning properly, and trained to do that. So, as we've seen in a prophylaxis setting, the products are used in a different context, and they may be used together and as a system. And this is why we have the DMG Flairesse Prophylaxis line as a system. So we have a fluoride gel, we have a fluoride foam, we have a fluoride varnish, and we have this fluoride prophylaxis paste. And let's look into this a little bit more. The Flairesse prophylaxis paste comes in 3 different grids, and this is nothing really astonishing. So it's the usual cup, it's the usual application procedure, you put it on the teeth. But at that moment, it becomes very, very important and very distinctive from other products, because what you don't want in this setting is that, first of all, your product is drippy. If the product drips, it's ugly, it's nasty, you don't want that, and we don't have that. The second thing is even more of a problem for the dentist. Yeah, you want to avoid that. And this is very, very important. This is a prophylaxis paste that does not splatter. And this is a huge benefit in the dental practice. If you mention this no splatter, you're sure to get some interest in the product. So try this. Now, the gel or foam, both are used typically, first of all, in a tray. So this is a foam tray that you put the gel or the foam in, and then you apply it for 1 minute. This is a very short application time, actually, into the patient's mouth. And that gets it into very close contact with the teeth. The gel, you may apply that as well with a prophylaxis cup. You may even use a brush. So everything is fine in order to apply the gel. The foam is something special. If you're a kid and you get this foam in the tray, you normally hate it because it doesn't taste nice and it's ugly. But this is a real sensory experience. So it's great for kids, and kids love it. There's videos on the internet for kids who don't like this treatment, but try this and they'll be really, really happy patients. So the foam usually comes into these trays, and that's a nice thing. And the last thing that we have in this line is the varnish. Now, what's so special about the varnish? Well, it is a single-use product. Comes in a nice application system. You get the brush with it. Nothing extraordinary, except that when you apply it, it is clear. And this is a big, big advantage, because the usual thing with your varnish is that it looks like this, yellow. And not only is it yellow, it's later on flakes off your teeth, it tastes ugly, and all of this you don't have with the Flairesse varnish. It's a huge advantage to have this clear, pleasant feeling when you leave a prophylaxis sitting, when you leave the dental office, and no one notices that you have this on your teeth. When I was a patient myself, my dentist asked me, "Do you have a date today?" And I said, "No." I said, "Okay, then we can do this deep fluoridation and we can really get your teeth fluoridated." But yes, they were really, really very yellow, my teeth at that point. So it is a distinct advantage to have a clear varnish on this one. And whichever product you choose, they all contain xylitol. If you're not familiar with xylitol, that is a sugar replacement substance. And what it does, it's also karyostatic, so it keeps the bacteria in check. You don't get caries that easy. So that's a huge thing. And the best of all, and you need to try this. I mean, there's no sensory TV at that moment, and I can't make you experience the great, great taste of Flairesse. But we have it in melon, we have it in strawberry, and we have it in mint. And you should really, really try this for yourself, for the prophylaxis assistant, and for the dentist, and I guarantee that this will be a breakthrough in your sales. Give it a try it yourself, convince yourself of the wonderful taste of Flairesse. Thank you.